What a beautiful and idyllic island we have before us. Cranberry Island, the topic of today's video. A fairly large island set on the south end of Far Harbour. It's composed of 3 locations, all of which we should be covering today. Ignore the weird fuzziness around the edges of stuff touched by god rays. Not sure why it's doing that. We should be taking the following route around this island, starting from the top right generator. I will show you where to find this crudely drawn, yet surprisingly accurate children's map. Now, let's gander. To the left of that little pier, we come to the generator I stated was found at the top of the map. On the way to it, and at other points at this island, you will be attacked by wolves of varying levels, nipping your arse like shitheads. The generator itself is very large, the largest of all of them, in fact. It's also broken. Heading up to this panel at the side will trigger a series of options you can use to go about fixing it. After you've done so, you can head around and actually switch it on. As you do, you may notice the beer bottles lying around, as well as a few other objects. Now this would suggest recent habitation, which, as we will come to learn, isn't the case for the primary group that was set up here. Going back the way we came, and also following the route on the map, we pass this wolf, who foolishly begged for mercy while touching itself. Past that is a dock of sorts. Just to the right as we enter it, we see this small building here, wrecked, for the most part. The roof has caved in, and all we have that discern its use are these filing cabinets, and its proximity to the docks. Likely it was used for paperwork. Round the back, located on one of these barrels, is the map I showed you earlier, Eliza map of home, which seems to be the route she took while she was still living here. Then we can head around to the front and take this ramp up to the roof. Here we find a dead trapper. It's bodies like this that I suspect are the reason for some of the beers and such we find here, that really should be long gone by this point. Opposite that are a few warehouses. Note the propaganda about being watched, it's relevant later on. Up these stairs, at the top, on a shelf on one of these shelves, we can find Eliza's first journal entry. This entry was from the 15th of February, 2077, so the year the bombs dropped. We learn that Eliza has a grandfather, and his name is Pat. He was yelling in his sleep, and it seems to be a recurring issue, one that Eliza's mother seems to have to sort out. Pat is also doing badly enough that Eliza's mother wants him to move in with them, presumably to keep an eye on him. It could be Pat is just old, or he could have an illness of a sort. We can't tell just yet. Looking around this warehouse, and the one next to it, it looks like goods were moved back and forth between them. We can also find some drink here. More possible evidence of some other people being here. An old truck can be found outside the second warehouse. It looks like someone tried to fuel it up at one point. There are some explosives here also. It could be that this was part of what they moved and sold here, but it's too soon to tell. Behind that is a ship that seems to have been in the process of being unloaded when the war started. It's now partially sunk behind the island, tipping over quite precariously. Some of its cargo seems to have been unloaded, though the contents are unknown to us. Now, you may watch me slowly fail to climb aboard. Not my finest moment. In the lower part of the ship, we can find 3 safes, one of which has already been looted, or else it just fell into disrepair over time. Cargo similar to that on land can be found strewn about the place. This makes it all seem the more likely that it was in fact being unloaded when it all kicked off. There's nothing more of interest on this boat, so we shall head back to the dock. We can find another 2 warehouses, but in front of them is something more interesting. It's a cook fire, and it seems very makeshift. Likely it was being used by whoever was here after Eliza and her family, probably people like the trappers. Note the white paint. There was also some on the truck, and you can find it in a few other places throughout the island. Bar a failed attempt at making a hand of Sauron, I can't really think why anyone would do this. In the first of the second group of warehouses, we can find more drink, once again left out in the open. So unlikely to be old, due to how populated Far Harbour is, relatively. The one next to this one is pretty empty, bar for the sleeping bag upstairs. It could be a recent addition, but the basketball makes me think that a pre-war individual, perhaps a certain young person, who we shall soon hear about, could have used it. Now we progress down what is left of this road here, which is also part of the route taken on the map. However, first, we shall be heading into these buildings to the right here. Also, fuck me, the scheme is quite beautiful, isn't it? Anyway, the first building here looks like a shed, or something once used for storage. It has some miscellaneous items present, as well as some more explosives. The house next to this one was lived in, and is special, as it's Eliza's house, We know this as it has a heart beside it on the map, and on the bed, we can find her second journal entry. This one took place on March the 2nd. Someone called Nathan was out by some of the pipes we've seen, near the home of the previously mentioned Pat. It seems he isn't meant to be, as Eliza wanted to tell her mother. However, Nathan seems to be angry about something, and is taking it out on her instead. As a result, she chose not to, for fear of further bullying. The bottom drawing seems to be him looking in at her through a window. It seems there's some bad blood between the two of them. Alright, so back outside. We're not going to go onto the main route again just yet. First of all, let's take a look at the other house opposite this one. It's bigger, and whoever lived here seemed to have once had a dog. The spits set up here are more signs that someone else took up residence here after the bombs hit. Likely that dead trapper at the start. The arse of this house has collapsed, and on the table here, we can find Eliza's third journal entry. Here, we are introduced to two other characters, her father and someone called Stephen. Given the context of most of these journal entries, it's safe to assume that Stephen and Nathan were her brothers. Her dad tells Stephen, if he doesn't keep the pumps running, it'll be more than just the pipe shutting down. She then assumes that Stephen was not maintaining them properly, and she doesn't like them fighting. Now, at first, I thought the dad was implying he'd shut Stephen down if he did not keep them running. However, with what we learn later, that was not what he was referring to. So it seems this house wasn't too sturdy, or at least the land it was on wasn't. Over time, it appears to have dropped away and fell into the ocean. The teddy bear is odd. Can't understand why it would be here. Round the back, we can find this chair floating in the water. It used to have a Jangles the Moon Monkey on it, but it's moved. Yet more evidence that they are evil. Now, we can get back onto the primary map route, this time approaching the Cranberry Bog. As we do, we see another building straight ahead. Before we go into it, however, note this tree. When you first arrive, a gulper will be hanging from it upside down, which to me anyway is very strange behaviour. Inside, we find a lot of tables and various types of machinery, which we shall talk about in just a moment. First, we can find Eliza's fourth journal entry here. It seems she was at least old enough to work on this farm/dock, as that is what she was doing when Pat went off in one. He seems quite paranoid, maybe a bit of dementia in there as well. Eliza's grandmother died at some point, and apparently this affected the grandfather. He even began to accuse Nathan of tampering with the machines around the farm. Not saying he was right, but so far Nathan seems shifty/bit of a shit. He also blames the government a lot. So yeah, Pat is not doing great. The machines in front of us seem to have been for processing or crushing up berries. Probably cranberries. From the looks of the rest of the room, that may have been what it was used for. The chem station could also belong to them, as this family is, more and more anyway, seeming a bit survivalist to me. They seem to make and process a lot of their own stuff. The trucks just in front of this building seem to have been in the process of being loaded, just like the one at the dock, though most of the crates are empty. From the pipe that is going into one of them, I assume this was used to pour something into the crates, or filter and collect something out of the water. That does seem to be the process of this very large machine, as it seems to take the water in and mix through it. These makeshift walkways seem to have been erected to allow movement over this bog. The ropes used as a makeshift handrails also play a role as nets for each quadrant of the walkways. So I know some of you will have figured it out, from the names, the small machines, the large one, and the fact that this is Cranberry Bog. Present in these quadrants would have been cranberries. In fact, that machine is definitely a cranberry harvester. Now I'm not sure how they would have moved the cranberries between quadrants, as the nets would have trapped them. The machine seems quite stationary, so I doubt it would move. If anyone watching is familiar with cranberry harvesting, please feel free to chime in the comments section. By these sheds, we can find a few boats. It seems that the presence of mud was likely much lower at some point, meaning these boats would have been a feasible means to traverse the water at some point. In between the sheds is a duffel bag, with a very large amount of money. Now pre-war this would make sense. So maybe somebody was taking money or getting paid off here for some purpose. Beyond that, it just seems like a very random thing to be lying around. Back behind the harvester, we pass an area underneath one of the buildings. It is key to the story of this place, but we shall come to it at the end. For now, we can pass the dam-like setup over here and take a look at the second generator, which can be repaired in much the same way as the first one could. We also find Eliza's fifth journal entry here. This one took place on the 23rd of July, and yes, I did notice they spelled 23rd wrong. Eliza seems to be missing her grandmother, and it seems she played some hand in holding the family together, as there were less arguments when she was present. The part about her grandpa confirms what we have begun to suspect. It seems that, after she passed, he either became markedly worse, or perhaps he never exhibited symptoms at all before. The drawing at the bottom is pretty sad. I assume it was a chair she used to sit in, and on it is what looks like a shawl or a blanket. Aww. If we head to the left of that generator, we can come to another small building on the very edge of the bog setup. Inside, it also has a berry thingamabobber, whatever it's called. Beside it is the 6th note of Eliza's journal. It also takes place on the 8th of August, and old Pat's at it again. He's raving about government goons, and the like. Then things get a little odd. Her dad tells him it's insured, and they sorted it when they finalised Pat's will. Now Eliza didn't know what that meant, and Nathan refused to tell her. He just said to be excited about what's in Grandpa's will. Okay, so I'm starting to think that Pat owned the farm. I also think that maybe they were getting tired of him and maybe used his confused state to get him to give them everything in the will. Now, not sure what the farm being insured has to do with it, but I think they all wanted Pat dead. The rest of the room doesn't really have anything of interest in it, so we need to progress along the route again. This means going up the hill beside the 2nd generator, going across the road and taking the path down onto the other side of the dam/bridge. One point I do want to bring up is how this small island connected to the rest of Far Harbour. I mean, it's doubtful that there was a series of roads to all the other small islands north, linking eventually to the main part. That means that there once had to have been a road that linked up to the western part of the island here, though at this point it's probably long collapsed or submerged. They could have gotten around by boat, but they had cars here, so they must have used them. Next, let's go to the right here off this road, and towards the dam. It is here that I came across the only outdoor skeleton I could find. We can find them here in this boat, which makes it likely they were in the boat when they died, and as such the bombs are a likely culprit. I also think the water level was definitely higher at some point, as parts of this bog are too shallow to use a boat to traverse easily. Another device like the one on the other side of the dam is present here, and would also have harvested the cranberries out of the quadrants in the bog. Then the crates were probably moved to the buildings we see at the docks, or the smaller ones near the main bog. Just before we move up to the last generator here, I would like to draw your attention to the small cave just opposite this tree. Inside it will be a sleeping, or perhaps waiting is the better word, gulper, which will then proceed to attack you, jackass. Up on this platform, we can find a table here, and on it will be the final journal entry of Eliza. So this is a typical final journal entry. Eliza is gonna head to the Bar Harbour for a Halloween party, and she seems excited. She mentions a few people, likely other children her age, and given the relative isolation of their island, maybe she doesn't get a lot of chances to see them. Nathan has disappeared again, and it appears to be a constant thing these days. She thinks her mother is going to take her, and she can't wait to write about everything that happened. Now obviously she never got the chance to, the bombs hit early the next day, but the family were still on the island. So where are they now? Now, we can repair the final generator, and this one is guarded by a yagwai. You repair it by fixing these pipes here. This is also the generator close to the house we think the grandfather was in, so I wonder if this or the output pipes to the right were the ones he accused Nathan of tampering with. We know Nathan was missing a lot, and he was missing the night before the bombs hit, and we found a corpse in a boat. Now, to find out what happened to the family. To do this, we have to head back to the area I mentioned earlier. It's actually a bunker, and it was powered by the 3 generators, so now we can open it. And inside, we find the family. The Gibbons. Victoria Gibbons, mother of Eliza. Frederick Gibbons, father of Eliza. I'll Pat, here as a legendary glowing one. And finally, we have Stephen, who for some reason is not only a really low level ghoul, but he became friendly after Pat resurrected him. Good Stephen. So yeah, the family took shelter in this bunker, and they all turned into feral ghouls. The parts further in are collapsed, and the hazmat suits are damaged for some reason. Not likely time, as we have seen suits of similar age work just fine. Maybe the damaged suits were why they turned. We also find Eliza's family drawing. From the left, I think it's Nathan, Stephen, Frederick, Eliza, Victoria, and then Patrick. Nathan is scratched out, and it may be because he was bullying her. He isn't found among the furrows here, and neither is Eliza. Inside the footlocker, we can find the Cranberry Island shed key and the supplies note. The army fatigues present could mean that someone in the family was involved with, or was at one point involved with the army. Possibly Pat. The note was addressed to Nathan, likely from their father. He wanted all the supplies moved from the shed to the bunker, as they are very vital, and that Stephen was not to be made to do it. Now, as we shall see, this was not done, and remember that Frederick said to Stephen that if the generator went down, it would affect more than the farm. It appears it would also affect the bunker as well, likely for radiation shielding, air circulation and power. The shed in question is found at the east side of the island. You will be attacked by a softshell mirelurk here, as well as a leveled one and a leveled mirelurk king, so be ready for that. Outside of it, there are also signs that someone was camped out here. Given its proximity to the water, it must be recent, as this would have been washed away long ago if it wasn't. Inside the shed, in the corner, we find shelves upon shelves loaded with supplies. Really, almost every type of crafting material one would require, which is great for us. Also, the explosive that we found at the various points in the island were likely also meant to be the supplies for the bunker. It's also clear that Nathan never bothered his arse to move any of this into the bunker. Lazy shit. This glorious place was Cranberry Island, named so for its, well, for its production of cranberries. On this island, we find the many pages from Eliza's journal. Keep in mind that their location can be random. In it, we learn that her family fights a lot. Nathan, her brother, bullies her and is constantly disappearing. Her father, Frederick, seems to fight with her other brother Stephen as well. Her grandfather Pat is old and raves a lot. It could be dementia, or possibly some form of PTSD, since he does hate the government, and if those military fatigues were his. Now, we read about the insurance and the will of Pat. I am unsure exactly what it could all mean. Pat doesn't remember sorting his will, and I'm not sure what laws were present in the Fallout universe regarding the soundness of mind one would have to be in to complete one. It could be that the family got Pat to leave them everything. They then could have planned to kill him, but to be honest, that is speculation on my part. The insurance would only make sense if they knew something was going to happen. Perhaps the reason all the generators were sabotaged was because they insured the farm, and they planned to claim the insurance the damages would bring. On the day before the bombs, Eliza was to go to a Halloween party. She is not present in the bunker, but her mother was. Now, since the family were all locked in the bunker, and seemed to have been since the war, that means Eliza was never there. Maybe she didn't manage to make it, or she could still have been at the mainland from the night before, and her mother left her there and planned to collect her on the 23rd. However, the bombs hit, and the family had time to get into the bunker, but Nathan wasn't present either. So since the drawing was there, and the notes for Nathan, we can assume they could come and go into it, presumably to stock it up, which Nathan was meant to do. However, he seems to have been very absent, especially towards the end, as Eliza notes. Due to this, I think he was the body we found in that boat. I also think the sleeping bag we found by the warehouse was probably his as well. Now, why was he out there? He could have been bringing the supplies in, but the key was in the bunker, so it's unlikely. I think it's more likely that he was sabotaging the generators. Maybe he was in on the whole insurance scheme, or maybe he knew the bunker was not supplied well, and once the power was cut, they would all be trapped and die. Then he could claim the insurance, as the harvest would be ruined, and everything from Pat's will. Whether it was all part of an insurance scam and they forgot, or Nathan did it when he realised they were all in there, the bunker lost power. It did so because the generators were no longer working. Because of this, and the lack of supplies, coupled with the likely very large dose of radiation, they were all turned into ghouls. We don't know how long it was before they went feral. Eliza, if she was outside, either died in the initial blast or sometime after it if she survived. Nathan's death was likely immediate. What I can say for sure is this: no one ended up claiming anything from old Pat's will. An old Cranberry Island, and the story of the family who ran it. I hope you liked this look at all of it. If you did like it, give the video a like, and if you want regular updates, subscribe. Any suggestions for lore or future videos should be left in the comments below. Better yet, go onto my subreddit so we can discuss them in more detail. It's linked in the description. If you wish to, you can support me on Patreon, £1 or $1. I ask for no more. Any rewards you would like to see there that I don't have, message me, and I will take a look. Follow me on Twitter or Facebook to get regular updates or have a wee chat. Any business you wish to discuss, email me at thenthapple.business@gmail.com and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope to see you in the next one. And until then, Goodbye.